Hi, this is Stephanie Miller from The Stephanie Miller Show. Please enjoy this exclusive clip from my show on Political Voices Network. You retweeted someone who said in today's EU, the Trump trial, just this one, would be enough to sink any politician's career. Forget about inciting an insurrection, stealing state secrets, etc. Sadly, it says more about us as a society than anything else. As diplomats say, you get the government you deserve. I mean, I hear this all the time, that people around the world are just like WTF, right?
Well, until about 8 years ago, it was WTF. Any one of these things could have sunk any person running for office. I mean, look at Mitt Romney and just his, what was it, the folder of women. Just that
Yeah.
phrase, the folder of women, or
Binder.
putting his
Binders.
dog on the
Right.
binder full of women. That's right. Or putting his dog on the roof of his car. We have people shooting dogs and men sexually assaulting, harassing, and paying off women.
Yeah.
And that's fully acceptable. And there's only one reason for it. Trump's base threatens violence.
Yeah.
And that means the news media has accepted what they accept in the Republican Party. People have now thought, well, if we do anything to this elderly white man who's the leader of, the indecency tribe in America, people will come at us with guns.
Yeah.
So they are giving the entirety of those people, the MAGA, racist, bigots, armed idiots, a pass for being violent, like on January 6th.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, where do I even? First of all, I just wanted to say, to your point, and at this trial, this broke my heart. I just think Stormy Daniels is so much braver than the entire Republican Party put together. But her attorney praised her for facing a barrage of hostility during cross-examination at the trial, and for what he says is her determined reaction not to cave to his attorneys. He said, "I knew her time to shine would be on cross." But this is the part, Malcolm, to your point. The attorney admitted while Daniels wore a brave face in court, outside of court, she was terrified and wore a bulletproof vest under her attire. He said she has a lot of fear. She really does. I mean, she was concerned about security coming into New York. She wore a bulletproof vest under her everyday clothes. I can tell you, before she came on Sunday, she cried herself to sleep. I mean, she was paralyzed with fear, not taking the stand or telling her story, but what someone might do to her. And that is the whole Trump movement. You're right.
71 million Americans voted for Donald Trump. And out of that, don't tell me that there aren't any who would take up arms or haven't taken up arms. There's over 1,000, almost 1,000 convictions from January 6th of people who wanted to violently overthrow the government of the United States. But because there's 71 million Americans, because Republican politicians coddle them, right now, people, especially news media is almost the worst. They talk about the January 6th uprising, but they allow it to be both sides.
Yeah.
So instead of saying this is wrong, this is indecent, they sort of condone the fact that latent threat of violence against anyone, like Mike Johnson, or who people will say, could actually come up and give you the full Mike Pence treatment.
Yeah.
Look at all these idiots that were at the trial yesterday. You're going to talk about them, all the vice president candidate wannabes, all dressed like children of the corn, same blue suit, same red tie.
Doing the exact same talking points that Trump wrote, that a reporter saw him writing. I mean, it is so pathetic, Malcolm. You're absolutely right. And can I just say, I hope the guy that attacked Nancy Pelosi's husband gets the full 40 years that they're talking
40
about.
years.
Because
he'll die in jail.
Inspired by Donald Trump and this January, and trying to complete the January 6th violence by killing Pelosi. I just have to say this story. Yet another false claim by Trump supporters in defense of the January 6th rioters has been blown to pieces after House Republicans released their latest batch of footage on the attack on the Capitol. I mean, Malcolm, you've written about disinformation for years, but the things that we have seen with our own eyes are things they're still trying to lie about. The footage puts the lie into the assertion that police at the Capitol just stood by and opened the doors to let rioters in, a claim that's often used as evidence that the whole event was somehow an entrapment operation to trick Trump supporters into committing acts of violence. The footage showed police trying to hold the line, prevent the mob from bursting in through several doors at the Capitol, often being overpowered by a flood of people rushing in. At no point in the footage did police stand aside or open the doors to allow people in. Defenders of the participants have also pushed a number of false claims, including none of them were armed, which was swiftly debunked as several were arrested on various weapons charges. Why do you think Trump said, take the effing mags away? Yeah. They're not here to hurt me. And we saw footage of people in trees with rifles, right?
Yeah, and one of the more famous cases was a DEA agent who was being fired before January 6th, showed up with his badge and his sidearm and went into the building flashing his badge, carrying his sidearm. We've seen other people who had drawn and brandished sidearms. We found the guy who had bombs and AR-15s in his car just one block away. But our problem is we're discussing that. And what we need to do, this is my quarterly discussion with you about meta-narrative framing, okay? We get into debates with people about things we absolutely know are true. Do not debate these. They want the debate because they think, like Karl Rove said, while you're debating it, we'll be recreating history and breaking laws. And you can debate that too, but we're going to get away with things. You have to call these things lies. The first word out of your mouth should be, that's a lie, you're a liar.
Yep.
And, sorry to say it, we're not here to do kumbaya because these people cannot be talked out of their delusion.
Yeah.
You have to establish the stage for everyone else who is not in delusion.
Malcolm, I'm glad you're sitting down because this will shock you. From Wired.com. A Kremlin-aligned network called Doppelganger is exploiting college campus protests by using fake versions of real news sites to push both pro-Palestine and pro-Israel disinformation. Oh, thank God you're sitting down.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
I
Did you
can't believe
faint?
that's happening. Still my beating heart. Let me get my picture of Edward Snowden here and fan myself. But, God almighty. So what else is new? I mean, this happened. Do you recall about 7 years ago, this happened to Joy Reid and I. We were at a conference in Pasadena, and we were receiving death threats saying, come watch us kill Malcolm Nance and Joy Reid on stage. And we tracked it back to the Internet Research Agency in Russia that was trying to incite Americans to come to the event. They wouldn't see an assassination, and then they would get angry and voice their displeasure at the event. This is what we called marionetting, where they play you like a little puppet. And that's now happening on university campuses and, and with these groups. They are creating a constellation of disinformation.
Yeah.
Because Russia backed Hamas. Russia backed Iran that backed Hamas. Russia backed the Yemenis who backed the Iran who backed Hamas. All of this is a network of horrible disinformation. And it's bad enough that these kids aren't particularly well read. I'm sorry, they're not. But we have to try to dissuade them of going to websites that are just full of bull and propaganda.
All right. Well, I don't agree with everything you say about everything, but I still love you. You retweeted John Cipher. Just for this, it does occur to me this could be written about Trump, but he said restraint with Putin won't work. He will only be reasonable when he fears losing power. Failing to threaten his control is just perceived as weakness. I do think there's just a straight line between Netanyahu, Trump, Putin. They're just okay. So let's talk about
two out of three of them are trying to stay out of prison.
Yeah.
Just be advised. I mean, when you're talking oligarchs,
Putin should be in prison.
About trying to stay out of prison, and Putin's running all the prisons on the other side and is supporting these people. Look, I agree with you. That those two, Netanyahu and Trump, have a lot in common.
Yeah. So let's talk about this latest. The deputy spokesperson for the UN Secretary General, when asked about Monday about reports that the UN had revised down by half the death toll of women and children in Gaza, said it's not quite the case. He launched into a lengthy explanation. The organization admits to relying on figures from the Hamas-run Ministry of Health in Gaza. I mean, Malcolm, I've said on this show, and again, you may not agree with me, but I don't trust Hamas or the Israeli military sometimes. So I'm not sure what your take is on this. I think we can all agree whatever's happening in Gaza is a tragedy. I don't know the
Yeah,
exact
all
number,
you know
but
why?
it's
Because all wars are tragedies. All wars are tragedies. Hamas initiated this war and brought about the tragedy. Look, I'm not here to number crunch
yeah.
at all. I've written Substacks about the numbers. It was very clear in the first week when they were reporting 6,748 dead that they couldn't possibly count that number and confirm those. And then it went up exponentially almost by a factor of 10 that you could actually calculate, and statistics could not possibly happen. People are dying. That's all you need to know. It's regrettable that people are dying on both sides. But to come right out and believe everything a terrorist group says from day one is ridiculous. Hey, Al-Qaeda said they killed no one on 9/11.
Yeah.
Were we going to believe that? I mean, until bin Laden's video came out where he was happy and showing himself laughing about how he didn't think both towers would come down. A lot of people, even to this day, believe Al-Qaeda didn't do that.
Yeah.
This is where disinformation and propaganda will hack your own mind.
By the way, Bobby Kennedy, for one. Bobby Kennedy is a 9/11 conspiracy theorist, which not enough attention is paid to his, initial lunacy before even the anti-vax stuff.
Did you talk about the Yelp review from the worm?
No.
That was dining on his brain. Instead, he gave him 1 star.
He died of the worm.
He said it was
The worm died of a nut allergy.
Empty space.
Yeah.
Either he died of starvation or he died of a nut allergy. Fill in your own joke here.
Oh, yeah.
It's fine. Malcolm, last thing, just as we're talking about Netanyahu, I just wanted to get your take on. I saved this from last week. Netanyahu urged the government of Qatar to continue to transfer money to Gaza in a secret letter sent to the Qatari leadership in 2018. He basically asked them to fund Hamas. Netanyahu explained the funding would reduce the motivation of terror groups there to carry out attacks, would prevent a humanitarian crisis, and was vital for preserving regional stability. Can you explain that to me? Well, why did Netanyahu want Hamas funded? I mean, he is so responsible for this whole thing. Go ahead.
I've seen this before. This has happened before. This is called buying peace. The United States is horribly guilty of this all over the world, where we think if we give you a boatload of money, you'll appreciate it, and you will just not attack us.
Yeah.
So it happened under virtually every Israeli prime minister, including trying to buy off Yasser Arafat and al-Fatah and establishing the Palestinian Authority, which made Yasser Arafat so rich, his wife and daughter in Paris have $8 billion in their bank account.
Yeah.
So paying people off doesn't necessarily work.
Netanyahu
thought he was going to do that with Hamas.
He's horribly incompetent. October 7th happened on his watch. I mean, the whole thing.
He should have resigned that first hour.
Yes, and it went on for hours. With no. Anyway.
No, he's incompetent. He needs to go.
Thank you.
If I see him, I'll ask him, why didn't you resign?
Okay, thank you. All right, good. We end on agreement. I love you, Malcolm Nance.
Yay!
Love you in your man cave. See you next week.
You are invited to Stephanie Miller's Sexy Liberal Save the World Tour. It's the political comedy event of the year, and it's coming to a city near you. Join Stephanie Miller, the queen of progressive talk radio, along with Hal Sparks, John Fugelsang, and the comedy duo Frangela, mocking all the fascists and trolls for a tour that is hilarious, inspiring, and deeply offensive to just the right people. It's an all-new tour with all new guests and a side-splitting evening of stand-up. Stephanie Miller's Sexy Liberal Save the World Tour.